Last week we set up our bullet journal for the month, and this week let's make the weeklies. I hope you find an idea worth trying or watching here. If you do, click the like button and subscribe for more bullet journal fun. Here you'll find different spreads and layouts as always, and mushrooms are very easy to draw, so they're perfect to try out. No one can tell you that such a mushroom doesn't exist, because all kinds of mushrooms exist. If not in real life, they exist in fairylands and are inhabited by magical creatures. There are so many stories about it. First, I chose my design, sketched everything out, and tore the brown paper into pieces that were the right size for my space. I glued the paper on and inked the mushrooms with my technical pen, or you could use fine liner, of course. This is Rotring Isograph in 0.3 mm, or you could use a small size in fine liners. For the gills of the mushrooms and other little detail that you're about to see, I used 0.2 if anyone is interested. And if you were to use a fine liner, you would use the extra small. I chose mushrooms in different shapes and colors to make the spread more interesting and wrote the days of the week with a brown brush pen by Pentel. I added details and shading with a finer nib and colored everything in with watercolors. For the shading, I'm using cross-hatching, and if you don't know how to do it, I highly recommend looking at Victor Carlacio's stuff. He's great at that. I have found out that when I'm adding gills to the mushrooms, it helps to divide the head into pieces first. That way the lines are spaced more equally and curve more naturally. I'm not saying you have to do it this way, but this really helps me. For the painting, I start with the basic wash that I already shade lightly. Because this paper doesn't take many layers of watercolors, I have found it's best to limit myself to 2 layers and to do as much shading as possible on the first go. So I put a lighter shade in the middle part and the darker tones on the edges because the mushroom is convex. For the moral, I have already shaded the holes with cross-hatching enough that I don't need to worry much about it. I just shade the whole mushroom lightly and that's it. I'm using Schmincke's student grade watercolor set, and the brush I love the most for the little pictures and details is Da Vinci Kolinsky, because it holds such a nice shape. The process is the same for all of the spreads, but the layouts are different. For the second week, I chose a vertical layout, stamped 6 circles at the top for the acronym of the day, and glued 6 pieces of brown paper where I drew the mushrooms. I added little fine details like lines and dots on the mushroom heads because color alone won't add enough contrast on this dark paper. I used white gouache in combination with watercolors here because watercolors alone didn't show well on brown paper. There was just not enough contrast and I wanted a paler champignon. I pay attention to not paint over the outlines, but the little details of course are covered. However, you can still see the lines through gouache if you water it down, the way I'm using it here. The third spread only has 2 illustrations, but they are bigger, 1 on each side, and the days are in the boxes in the middle. This is a very easy spread that would work for any theme, and you don't need to pay attention to how different illustrations interact with each other. These 2 are separate and have enough space around them, so you have a lot of legroom. On this page, I was a bit more sparing with the lines because I knew the color would do a lot of shading for me. To mark the space for the days, I used boxes and added a long letter on the side instead of the line. It looks nice if you leave a little bit of room at the top and on the bottom of the letter so it doesn't merge with the box. I also painted the letters for the days this time around, and that helped them stand out too. My next spread is circular design because, as anyone who has been here before knows, I need to have at least one circular design in my bujo. For that, I used an image of a cluster of mushrooms, like they so often form. Unfortunately, I forgot to hit the record button when I painted this, but it's done the same way as all the others. I took some liberty with colors because I know the mushrooms often look a bit different in real life than on the pictures anyway, so any shade of brown would work. For the last week, I drew another cluster of mushrooms, but this time at the top of the page. Added 2 brown paper spots on each side for the notes or whatever, and laid the days of the week almost in line at the bottom of the illustration. Here you can see all the layouts just in black and white, because I tend to draw them first and then color them all in. That way I don't risk something bleeding through even before I do an outline, so at least you get a crisp line drawing. Also, the paper isn't warped yet, so it's easier to draw, and it also feels nice to just go with the flow and draw everything at once and then paint everything. It's nice to stick to a medium for a while. The hand gets used to it and it just feels nice. I decided to go a little bit further with these mushrooms and color them in purple and violet hues. This particular species actually has this kind of varieties. Here's the final flip through. First, with all my weeklies, I really like the first page. Which one is your favorite, by the way? I'd love to know. Tell me in the comments. And while you're down there, hit the subscribe button. I already have some interesting ideas for December bujo, so stick around for that one. Now the whole month at a glance covers monthlies, lists, trackers and weeklies. By the way, if you have any wishes for my bujo themes, let me know. I'm always on the hunt for new ideas and I would love to bring you something you'd want to see. I hope to see you next week. Bye bye!